Hello everyone, and welcome to part 4 of the preview videos for the new Blood Feud in Transylvania DLC for Steel Division 2, this time featuring the 2nd Hungarian Division, the 25th Hadosztaly, and this one is relatively close to what we know from Tartalek in the base game, but it has some cool, unique units that it brings around to differ in a bit as well. Both obviously infantry divisions, but this one has a bit of its own spin. Let's start in the Recon tab, where we start with some BMWs, classic, and then go over to more BMWs, but with a Soul Thorn anti-tank rifle, though still not super useful. Then the Felderite Jere with MP40s, and these are relatively standard two-man snipers, recon. Also classic transport here, Baton D, and the M35, 38, and the BMW. Then you have a really interesting unit, the Ataran we already saw in the other new division as well, in Panchelos. A 15-point squadron with 12 hit points in the recon tab, a 15-point recon unit. But they're disheartened, and they only have good optics and good stealth compared to other recon units, exceptional stealth and very good optics, so they are not the most amazing recon. They are only one level above optics of normal infantry and the same level in stealth. But with the FEG-31, they have a pretty good rifle, and for 15 points, 12 hit points is quite nice, so something worth considering. Then the classic Chaba with its anti-tank rifle, and it's mediocre range, but always a cute vehicle to maybe bring along. And in this deck you could use vehicles maybe a bit more than you need them in Panzeros. And then the Lovash Felderitek with the Danuvias, the FEG, and the Soulthorn, also a pretty competitive recon unit with its 12 strength, LMG, a good SMG, and solid rifles as well. Then we come to the infantry tab, where obviously this deck has a lot of units, and the classic unit here is the standard Lovash that we also have in Tartalek, Danuvias, FEGs, Solothorn. So a pretty good unit with 12 strength for 20 points, good SMGs, solid LMG, solid rifles. Overall, for 20 points, one of the better standard line infantry. Maybe one of the best. Then you have your classic flamers, the Rohamar Kajok and the Akajok TNT units. Akajoks at 20 points, pretty good. Also now nice availability with 6, 12, 18, 13 strength, no LMG, but solid rifles, solid SMG, and a TNT, and they survive enemy TNTs as well, which is a nice thing for TNT versus TNT fights for this unit. So yeah, Arkajok really worthwhile taking. But another unit might be just as good, and that's the Heiji Lovash, which comes with a Molotov, costs us 5 points more, it's the same strength with 13, but it has more Danuvias, and it has a Madsen automatic rifle, so it has a bit of long-range firepower extra on top of that. Obviously a lot more short-range firepower, but no TNT. Molotov helps out a lot as well though. And the automatic rifle really helps out a bit more in this deck with the longer ranges. So issue with this, you can only get them on 0 red. That's the only issue with this unit, but it's a nice new unit for this deck that makes it different to Tartalek, and that gives you a bit of interesting firepower. Basically mountaineer forces here. So these are quite nice, the Heiji Lovash. They also have a leader unit with 6 hit points that comes in this lovely little cabriolet group. No other special transports here, another version of the group, and the M38. Obviously the M38 being the fastest out of these transport, but still only 80 kmh. Yeah, really nice solid leader, 25 points. Availability is an issue though. And you have a radio on them, so that's quite nice, but no smoke or anti-tank. And then you have a leader without radio for 25 points. Same 2-4 availability. Same amount or similar amount of transports. Doesn't have the normal group, but that doesn't really matter. Also 6 strength and gets a smoke. So you trade smoke and slightly better rifles versus radio. That's the trade-off between these two leaders. And then the next one is the Lvish 25G. The difference to the normal Lvish is that you pay 5 points extra for 1 extra Solar Thorn with an extra man, and then 2 FEGs are changed out for 2 more Danuvias. So the Lvish 25G, really powerful on all ranges, comes in on the same availability as the normal Lvish as well. You pay 5 points extra, but this is basically your kind of panzer, or more comparable to maybe the Guardia DP, but with the SMGs extra on top. This is also still good on shorter ranges. Sadly, the Solar Thorn are not automatic rifles, so they don't have insane firepower on CQC. If that would be the case, this would be a really nice squad with 2 automatic rifles and 4 SMGs. But the SMGs still make it so that this squadron can keep up in CQC with a lot of line infantry and beat them out. And if you max them out, you can also overrun maybe some better CQC infantry, as the Danuvia 39 is a relatively good SMG. If it would be the 43, this would obviously be even better, but the FEG also helping out with being a straight pullback rifle, a bit better than normal bolt action ones as well when it comes to accuracy and stuff. And then the last leader here is another 25-point leader with better availability. And you get a lot of cards of these, so if you want to have high availability leader, this is the one to go for. Yeah, trades basically one hit point for it, and a bit of worse rifles, or no radio, like compared to the others. So it's slightly worse than the other leaders, I guess, in direct comparison, but the higher availability is the thing that it gets on top. So nice decision making here with the leaders on what you want out of this. I like these leaders, all 25 points, and still all have their merits. Good balancing in that regard, in this division. And the infantry, also solid. Nothing super fancy here, but all slots are filled. You have a Molotov, you have a TNT, you have a flamethrower, you have a classic baseline infantry for 20 points, and you have a specialized longer range infantry for 25 points. So everything here is covered, and that is really nice. And everything is covered slightly above average, I would say. Like, not real, well, unlike only the flamethrower, not really, because it's a 5 hit point instead of a 6 hit point flamer. But the others are all slightly above the curve, I would say. But not the top of their class either. And then we come to the tanks, and here we get the fancy unit of this deck, the Srini, and you get 2 cards of these. And the Srini is an amazing little tank. It's basically a Stu 42, the 2000 meter range HE gun, as it also has 2000 meter range HE, but it comes in a tank tab, means way better availability, so you get a lot of these, and it has 5 more frontal armor for the same price. Everything else is basically identical stats wise. The heat shell, 30% accuracy, 1500 meter range, 100 millimeter penetration. The HE shell, similar damage, rate of fire of 6 is the same as well, but you have 5 more frontal armor for the same price, so that is nice. And the Stu is a really good vehicle, and the 5 extra frontal armor means that a lot of medium tanks will now really struggle, like the T-34s and the Shermans especially will now really struggle to penetrate this thing, whilst with a 100mm heat it can penetrate them all. And it comes with the availability of normal Stokes, so you can also upvet this thing pretty well and go, for example, for this, and then you have also somewhat decent accuracy and rate of fire on this thing as well. The Srini really beautiful little tank or assault gun more, and it's nice Hungarian engineering. You also get them in the 9th Cavalry, 1 card, and they stole some of the Hungarians in this campaign. But here obviously you get them with the OG nation they belong to. Also nice camouflage on the leader version. And yep, we had them in the campaigns before, I think. Now we finally have them in multiplayer as well. Or maybe we had the Srini one. One of the Shrinis was in there for sure. Yeah, support tab is a bit of an oddity because you have a lot of tabs, you have a lot of slots, but you don't have many choices. You have 6 cards of 50mm mortars, which you could fill out the tab with. You have 1 flamethrower. Yeah, that might be an option. And then you have 6 cards of trial laser that all come in button D, sadly. So no quick forward movement with these. And maybe something that could be changed as well, that these have different transport options. But yeah, if you want to spam your enemy with SMGs, you could, for example, go with this. And with A and B phase alone, have 60 Schwarlose. So this is another weird part of this deck. Obviously, you could do something similar with 50mm mortar. No clue how you want to micro that, but if you are an insane dude and you want to get a meme, you could do and go with 50mm mortar in A phase, maybe in a team game. Try to micro that. Don't know what you want to do with that, but feel free to test it out. Yeah, this is basically the support tab of this. You kind of are forced to spam either, as yeah, even after your commander, your supply, and your flamethrower, you still, well, maybe you can do double commander in this deck. Like, it's a bit odd that you have that many support tabs without having any more units. It's weird, but yeah, it is what it is, and you will have to do the best out of it. And it could be worse. Let's say it that way. It could be worse. Anti-tank is a classic Hungarian one as well. You get a 40mm Pak 40. You get the 40mm 40M, which is a bit handicapped by its range. If it would have 1250 meter range, I would like this a lot. With only 1000 meter range, it's a bit tough to use because they don't have that much extra range above enemy infantry. Normal infantry, they have less range or the same range as enemy HMGs and so on. Lots of tanks outrange them. The amount of spots you can use them at is a bit more limited and so on. So yes, they're cheap, but I don't like them too much. Transport options here also not great. You get a Solid Thorn and a tank rifle that you can bring in a BMW. Yeah, and then you get the Hetzer with the lovely camouflage here. And that is obviously a pretty helpful one as well. But yeah, only 1 card, sadly. Sadly, never 2 cards of the Hetzer. The second card of these would help out a lot, as this is your longest range AT you have in this deck. Sadly, no 2000 meter range AT, and your tank tab is more support HE, obviously, so your Hetzers have to do the tank hunting mostly. So second card of these would be really helpful to the deck. Anti-air, here you come. World War I Vintage. Are you ready, guys? World War I Vintage is in the house with the Rubber VR 76.5mm. A World War I anti-air gun that somehow the Hungarians still had to use in World War II. Meant to shoot down balloons and biplanes which out of paper. Now trying to shoot down full metal canopy planes like the P2 that race over the field. Has a surprisingly good rate of fire with 15 rounds per minute, but the accuracy is so abysmal with 6%. Even for a big AA gun, this is laughably low. Its HE shell also 10% accuracy against ground targets. So yeah, I have no idea how effective this thing actually is in combat. I would say not too effective, but hey, it's mobile. You know, somewhat at least. This truck obviously is also not the fastest thing in the world. And you shoot in the air, yes. Stress should be somewhat decent with 76mm, and the range is somewhat fine as well. So yeah, maybe you go for it, though you only go for it for the meme, because the other 2 options in this deck are totally fine. You get a Bofors, you get a Flak 36. So if you don't want to, you're not in need of using the rubber. But yeah, you can do so if you feel like it. In the artillery tab, you get another off-map, like in all these decks it feels like, though this time it's an air off-map, which is always a bit harder to use. 105mm also not the most efficient. And other than that, it's a pretty classic deck. You get the old French howitzers, the 97M 35mm, which have a good rate of fire. They don't have radio in here though, which is a bit annoying, but your 149mm at least have it. So, and these are always great, and you get a lot of cards, so you could auto-spam with these in team games maybe. The LAFH 18, never great, and really not something you want to use here, I would say. And yeah, the camouflage though, the Hungarian, is beautiful here. Then 120mm mortars and 81mm mortars, decent, but yeah, they are only additional, yeah, nothing fancy. They're just the classic stuff there. And then we go into the air, where we got a new plane, the Heya 2, based on Italian planes, but built in, I think the CR200 or 2000. I forgot the exact name of the Italian plane this is based on, but you can see really clearly that this is a base Italian design, but slightly differently built in Hungarian production, and it's a nice recon plane. Relatively fast, or pretty fast for a recon plane. It's relatively cheap, good availability, and you have some guns, 12mm, obviously not killing too much with 2 of those, but you can use that. If you want to have a different recon plane with a bit more guns, you can use the JU87 D5 with 2 20mm. And then we got another new fancy unit with a lot of guns, the JU87 D5 VB81B. And this one is another gun pod JU87 D5. Cheaper, 15 points cheaper. The original points of the D5 gun pods that we had before, where the original one was really strong. Though this one, I feel like is still weaker, even though it has 12 guns and extra guns instead of only 4. 7mm obviously are way worse than 20mm, especially for strafing. This thing is still great in killing of enemy airplanes, but again, ground targets, these 7mm don't do too much. So, yeah, I don't know how effective this will be, but the availability is nice, or like actually pretty great, and the price is super cheap, so hey, let's test this thing out. I'm looking forward to it, always in love with gunpod planes, so let's see how this goes. And then Me-210 fighter, really bad. Not the greatest damage output, not the greatest speed, and really bad agility. Medium resilience, but that's about it. Not a big fan of these things at all. They're cheap, they're numerous. You can't spam them out in A phase if you want to. That's the one big merit, but do you really want to? I guess that's also up to you. I guess if you want to air spam in this deck, you can do so. Like, could go with something like this, and you get a lot of planes in A. Could also get more and more of these then. And then you get some good fighters down here, so you really don't need the Me-210 fighter. You get a G6 U4 if you want to have a 30mm on a relatively agile plane, or if you want to have a fast plane with medium resilience, you get the Focke-Wulf F8. So pretty decent options here. Well, both relatively same speed, but Focke-Wulf, medium resilience, and also a bit better range on the 20mm compared to the 30mm, so a bit better chaser in general. So really no need for the Me-210, but you can do it. So in general, a relatively standard deck. Got some new units, the Hedgie, the Srini, the anti-air unit, and the plane, the Heya. So there is new stuff around here. Obviously the Ataren Durzek also new here in this one and the other Hungarian deck. Oh yeah, the Löwesch and so on. So there is some new stuff here, but it's maybe one of the lighter new divisions, and also I feel like it's a pretty standard division when it comes to playing it. But it's Hungarian at least, and that is quite nice, and the new units here should still be quite funny. I for sure at least will play this division once or twice for this thing alone. So yep, looking forward to get these guys out. If you don't want to miss the next preview, as we're coming into my 2 favorite divisions of this DLC with the next 2. Consider subscribing so you see it when it goes live. Next one will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. And yep, consider leaving a like so that more people see this, more people see that Steel Division will get new content, and that we get this community growing again. With that said, bye bye and have a nice day.